Hi guys, Olive here today with a book haul, my one and only book haul of this year. I did mention in a video quite some time ago that I was going to be pulling back on acquiring new books starting this year. I wanted to focus on what I own because I own so many books. Library book sales and used bookstores have made it just far too easy for me to acquire heaps and heaps of books, and I don't have anywhere left to put them. So I wanted to spend this year just really focusing on reading what I own and then hopefully clearing some of those out to make room for new books in the future. So that being said, I have not completely stopped acquiring books. I've received a few books as gifts. I have bought the occasional book for myself, new or used. I've gotten some from publishers. So I have put all the ones that I've gotten so far this year in a stack, and I thought I would show you all of those today. We're going to start off with fiction. I would say about a quarter of this haul is fiction, and then all the rest of the books are nonfiction because I'm still me, after all, but I bought myself a brand new copy of Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid because I wanted this Target Best Books of the Year edition. It has some extra goodies in there, and I really like the design. This is the new novel from the author of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, all of those big books, and I believe this one is set in the exact same universe as her other big novels, except this one is set in the 1980s, and it has something to do with the space program. That's really all I know about it. I typically like to know more about a novel before going into it, but I already really trust Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've really loved all of her big novels that I've read, and so I'm excited to finally be able to dive into this one. I have my own copy, and a very pretty one at that. Next, I got a slim little novella called The Most by Jessica Anthony. This one is set over the course of 8 hours on a November day in 1957. It is set in the USA, but apparently Sputnik is overhead, so it's got the Cold War era, so a little bit of a space connection going on in this one as well. This one being as short as it is, I am positive that I could inhale this in a single day, probably in a matter of hours. So if I find myself panicking at the end of the year trying to hit my Goodreads goal, I might turn here first. I got this next one after reading a review. It is called The Compound by Aisling Rahl, and this follows a 20-something young woman who goes to a remote island in order to compete on a reality show. That appealed to me as a big fan of reality television, but also as someone who was highly disappointed by the latest season of Love Island USA. It was an absolute dumpster fire, so I'm hoping to find this a little bit more entertaining. Then the publisher sent me Culpability by Bruce Holsinger, and then it went on to be an Oprah's Book Club selection. I've heard that this one centers around a car accident and that it questions whether AI was responsible for said car accident. If any of you have read this, I would really love to know what you thought of it, because I don't know what to think of this, just given that synopsis. I was inspired to buy this next book because I read and loved another book by this author. It's called Followed by the Lark by Helen Humphreys. This is a work of historical fiction, and it stars Henry David Thoreau as he's living on and around Walden Pond. I don't know anything else about this book, but I do know that it is bound to be gorgeous because I read her nonfiction book, The Ghost Orchard. It was all about apples. I actually reviewed it here on my channel. I loved that book. It has never really left me. I still think about it all the time, especially right now since it's apple season. I've been wanting to read more of her work, and I thought this would be a good place to start. I also found a used signed copy of The Coroner's Lunch by Colin Cotterill at a library's little book sale section. This is a murder mystery set in Laos in 1976, in which a coroner, in charge of an underfunded lab, goes on to investigate the death of a prominent politician's wife. It sounded really interesting. And then the last novel I have to show you in this haul is actually one I got at the only library book sale that I went to this year. It is called John Saturnal's Feast by Lawrence Norfolk. This is a work of historical fiction set in the 17th century. Our protagonist is an orphan who gets a job as a kitchen boy in a local manor house and then works his way up and eventually becomes the greatest cook of his generation. I love to cook. I love food writing. This one has actually been on my TBR for quite some time, so I was delighted to see this copy at that library book sale. But speaking of food writing, I also got some nonfiction books that cover that same topic, including The Flavor Thesaurus, More Flavors by Nikki Segnet. And the reason why the subtitle is More Flavors is that this is a sequel to the original Flavor Thesaurus, except that it just does more of what the original volume does. It gives different flavor combinations, gives you different recipe ideas. It talks about what flavors go well together, talks about what we know about them. I do a lot of cooking, and so I am sure this is going to be just as valuable to me as the first volume has been. And the next book I have to show you is the perfect complement to the previous book. It is called How to Taste by Mandy Naglitch. And this book dives into the science and also just the experience of tasting. I am going to have to read this one during restaurant week, or maybe I could pair it with some other really interesting culinary experience. But from food to drink, I also got Dusty Booze by Erin Goldfarb, and this book zooms in on vintage alcohol, spirits specifically, which apparently don't age like wine does. Instead, a vintage spirit is kind of a time capsule. It'll transport you back in time to the bottling date because it's going to taste exactly the same as it did on the date that it went into the bottle. And they're much sought after and collected because of that fact. And this book is all about the collection of those vintage spirits. It just sounded like such a great winter warmer of a read. But now let's talk about a different artisanal product, one of the wearable variety. I got myself a copy of Unraveling by Peggy Orenstein, which is a very odd sounding memoir about a woman's efforts to make a sweater, but not just any sweater. She wanted to be involved in every stage of the process of making this sweater. So she wanted to shear the sheep. She wanted to spin and dye the wool herself, and then obviously make it herself, craft it herself, knit or crochet. I'm not exactly sure how she went about doing that. This sounds so strange, but therefore, it is exactly my kind of thing. Another book that's right up my alley is called George by Frida Hughes, and this is a memoir about the author's experience raising an orphaned baby magpie. And that author just so happens to be the daughter of Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath. I can't believe I haven't read this yet. This next book I got seems to straddle the line between fiction and nonfiction, but I decided to put it in with nonfiction anyway. It's called Prairie Dresses Art Other by Danielle Dutton. And from what I hear about it, it's a kind of patchwork collection. And I normally wouldn't gravitate toward that kind of thing, but I really like this author. She wrote a novel called Margaret the First. I actually got a tattoo of a line from that novel. It was my very first tattoo, one of my now 2 tattoos. I just got another one recently. I don't think I'm going to be in the market for another tattoo anytime soon. I'm good with 2 for right now. I mean, you never know. I don't believe any part of this collection will end up on my physical person, but I do think I'm going to enjoy it nonetheless. I also have a lot of faith in this next author, which is why I pre-ordered my own copy of Syme's Letter Writer by Rachel Syme. She is a writer who I really enjoy. I like her shorter form pieces. She also gives really great perfume recommendations. She recommended what is now my all-time favorite perfume that I wear everywhere. But I know she also started a pen pal program during the pandemic, which I think inspired her to write this book, this interactive history of letter writing. And I think as I read this, I should probably preemptively buy some stationery, because even though I think my handwriting is hideous, I probably will be inspired to start penning some letters to people. But speaking of correspondence, as a gift, I got a copy of Dear Unknown Friend by Alexis Perry. And this is a history book about this Cold War era pen pal program between American women and Soviet women, which helped these enemies on paper realize that they had so much more in common than they would have thought. Another Russian history book that I also received as a gift is called The Last Tsar by Tsuyoshi Hasegawa, and this is about the reign of the final Romanov Tsar, Nicholas II. This is the period of Russian history that I know the most about because it's the one that I find the most interesting, but I don't know much about this historian. I've never read any of his stuff before, so I'm excited to hear his take on this. More history, I also got a copy of Footnotes by Cassine Gaines, which tells the story of the very first all-Black Broadway production back in 1921. As a former theater kid myself, I am so surprised that I know nothing about this story, but I am definitely intrigued. On the topic of music, though, at that library book sale that I mentioned earlier, I saw this copy of Scales to Scalpels by Lisa Wong. And the author of this book is not only a medical doctor, she is also a violinist in Boston's Longwood Symphony Orchestra. And in this book, she discusses the work of that orchestra, but also the interplay of music and medicine, which are two topics that I can't seem to get enough of. This next book is just about medicine, though. It's called The Empire of the Scalpel by Ira Rutko. And this book discusses the evolution of surgery from the Stone Age all the way up to the present day. This is another one that's been on my TBR for such a long time. I am very happy to own my own copy of it. But a medical story that actually went on to inspire a movie is told in the book Concussion by Jean-Marie Lascaux. If you don't know anything about this story, back in the early 2000s, a Pittsburgh-based pathologist was attempting to raise some red flags about football players experiencing concussions and then going on to develop CTE, a very, very serious brain condition. And because he tried to warn people about this, he ended up in a battle with the NFL. And that's what inspired the movie Concussion. It goes by the same name. It was actually filmed here in Pittsburgh. One scene was filmed right down the road from where I was working at the time. Even so, I still somehow haven't seen that movie. I would really like to see it, preferably after reading this book, which someone's dog had a nice chew on this cover. But since I mentioned Concussion, the movie, I figured I would move on to talking about a bunch of other books dealing with pop culture, including So Fetch by Jennifer Cation Armstrong. I love the movie Mean Girls. I saw it opening weekend when I was a teenager. Yes, we all knew how iconic it was immediately. I loved it back then. I still love it now. So when I saw that Jennifer Cation Armstrong, who focuses on writing these types of pop culture deep dives, she was featured prominently in a video I made about books on movies and TV shows. This is the type of thing she does. So when I saw she was writing one focused on Mean Girls, I knew I had to have it. Something else I love to watch is Jeopardy! Which is why I bought Answers in the Form of Questions by Claire McNear. And this is a look behind the scenes of the brainiest game/trivia show of all time. I am sure reading this book will give me a whole new appreciation for the show, which I would love to compete on someday. But another book I got that focuses on a show is My Good Side by Sheena Shea, a memoir by the former Vanderpump Rules star, which is a reality show. I got this book because I attended her event here in Pittsburgh, PA. It was one of her stops on her book tour, and you got a book as part of your ticket price. I already do know a good amount about this book because she has said things about it, released parts of it. It's also been covered very heavily across social media, and I follow a lot of those accounts. If I do get around to reading this entire thing, I know I'm going to have very mixed feelings about it because I have very mixed feelings about this woman in general. Another celebrity memoir that I got is The Can-Do Mindset by Candace Parker, which I actually pre-ordered so I could have this signed copy. It was signed by one of the best women's basketball players of all time. I really like Candace Parker. I've attempted to see her play twice, once when she was with the Chicago Sky, once when she was with the Las Vegas Aces. She was injured both times, so I didn't get to see her play, but I am really excited to read about her story and about how her outlook on life has allowed her to achieve the success that she has. I got one more sports book called The Big Fella by Jane Levy. This is a chunky biography of the baseball great, and I am nearly positive that reading this will make me want to rewatch The Sandlot. To close out this haul, I'm going to show you 3 books that were sent my way by their respective publishers. 2 of those 3 are memoirs, and one of those 2 memoirs is Pieces You'll Never Get Back by Samina Ali. And this was written by a writer who was actually penning her first novel when she very nearly died giving birth to her son. She had to work her way back to a sense of normalcy while also caring for a newborn. No easy task. The other memoir I was sent is called The River's Daughter by Bridget Crocker, which was authored by a whitewater rafting guide. And in this book, she discusses what the waters she travels have taught her about overcoming adversity in her life. And then the final book in this haul is Little Bosses Everywhere by Bridget Reed. And this is a book all about multi-level marketing schemes. It is the history of them in American society and how they have historically preyed upon the dreams of American citizens, particularly women. Earlier this year, I did read a small handful of books on pyramid schemes, MLMs. I was really interested in that subject for a while there, but sadly, I was let down by a lot of those books. However, I've heard really good things about this one, so I hope I find what I was looking for a few months ago in this book. So those are all the books that I've picked up over the course of this entire year. I'd love to hear from you about these books. Are you interested in any of them after seeing them here in this video? Have you read them? Do you want to share your thoughts? Do you think I should start with any one book in particular? I'd love to hear any or all of that down in the comment section below. I have listed and linked all of these books for you in the description box below if you want to check them out yourself. And at the very bottom of that exact same description box, you will also see links to everywhere you can find me around the internet. So Goodreads, Instagram, the Story Graph, all the places that I'm the most active around the internet if you want to keep up with what I am reading and doing right now. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.